Okay, so today I want to talk a little bit about how to actually sell cost plus jobs. We've talked a lot about the mechanics of cost plus, right? We've talked about how to create your cost plus estimate. We've talked about how to run a cost plus billing system. We've talked a lot about the mechanics of actually doing cost plus, but we haven't talked a lot about how to actually sell it. I've heard feedback from people over the last few months where it's like, well, hey, I'm getting into the situation where I'm telling the customer and trying to explain cost plus to them, and they're wondering like, well, how can I go with you if I don't know for sure how much is it going to be, right? Like if you're cost plus, you're not giving me a fixed price up front, right? How am I going to know what it's going to be, right? And so we're going to really teach you how to sell even with that major objection that comes up a lot of time, right? In addition to that, even if you are not really selling a lot of cost plus jobs right now, this kind of presentation, this talk I want to do, will still be highly relevant to your sales process. There'll be a lot of good stuff in here for your sales process. Ultimately, this is a talk about how to sell cost plus, but it's also a talk about just how to close more jobs. So some of you have been with us for a long time, and what I want you guys doing who've been with us for a long time, especially, is as I'm going over this stuff, I want you to kind of audit your own sales process. That's where you're going to see value here, right? Measure what I'm saying against what you're doing right now, right? So I want to open kind of with a quick story on this whole thing, because I too have faced this challenge with selling cost plus successfully. I remember about 2 years ago, we were doing a bathroom addition at Power Builders. And I remember we sent a customer a bill, and it was a large bill, right? It was like $48,000. And the customer didn't want to pay the bill, right? The customer didn't want to pay the bill. And they said something to me that I'll never forget, that caused me to get to a point where I'm like, okay, I've got to figure out how to do this better. And they said, well, if you can't tell me what the price is going to be before the job, you could just run up the price as much as you can. That seems unethical to me. It seems like you guys are being unethical. And I know that really hit hard for me, because I don't think of myself as an unethical person, right? And there was nothing about what we were doing that was trying to intentionally like overcharge or run up the charges at all for the customer. We were just trying to do the job that they were asking us to do, right? And now we're dealing with this customer situation where she's like, well, I'm not going to pay this bill. I knew you guys are cost plus, but I didn't know it was going to work this way. And that happened. I wish I could tell you. I mean, we do have a lot of successful stories of successfully selling cost plus. But we want to lead with that story to almost lead with the problem, right? And that happened because we were not following the steps laid out in this process. We weren't selling cost plus right? Whenever you introduce cost plus, the biggest hesitation or the biggest fear in some sense is, how am I going to get the customer to buy in? If I'm selling cost plus, what are they going to say? How am I going to explain it? Right? Has anyone dealt with this at all? I can't see everybody in the group. Yeah, we've got some hands up. Okay. So today is really about what are the steps, right? I know, Clayton, I'm glad you're here, buddy, because I know that this is relevant to you. Today is really about how to turn that fear, right? How to turn customer skepticism into confidence and gratitude, right? There is no other better way to charge people that's not just beneficial for your business, but there's no better way in construction to charge a customer, right, than through a cost plus system. So let's talk about it. right? Let's get into it. So first of all, let's go over just the reasons why a customer would want cost plus. At Redmond Growth, we focused a lot on how cost plus will benefit your business, right? We're like very clear about that. You guys get that, right? But I want to go over why a customer would want cost plus. So these are important points that you as business owners who are selling a cost plus job must really know, right? The first kind of rule here is that you must sincerely believe in the cost plus model, right? Why do we recommend it at Redmond Growth? Why do we believe in it so much, right? Because we have known and we've tried all the approaches and all the models to estimating out there, and we do it and we recommend it because this truly is the best approach all around, right? It's best for your business, best for the customer. We actually believe that. That's why we recommend it so much. And the first kind of step here as business owners, you must actually believe in it too. So let's talk about it, right? Why would a customer want a cost plus? Because a cost plus, you can tell the customer with a cost plus method, you always are going to get the best price on what it takes to do the scope of work here. What do I mean by that? With a cost plus, you pay what we pay plus a fee, right? That means that you're not going to be overcharged for materials, for, you're not going to get markups on subcontractors, right? You're not going to get these inflated kind of line items and you don't know what they mean, right? You're paying what a job actually costs, plus you're paying me, right, small fee in order to do the job for you. That's the first reason. You're always going to get the best price. Second reason why a customer would want to sell cost plus. So these are things that you can tell the customer. I'm giving you the actual things that you can tell a customer during the sales process, right? Second reason is that you as the customer will have full visibility with actual costs. A term I really like contractors using is that we are an open book contractor. That's a really good term for someone to immediately know what you mean, right? We share all the financials with you for the entire project. You're going to be able to see where every dollar is going. That's a very powerful statement, right? In a construction project for a residential customer, you're going to be able to see where every dollar is going. So you get full visibility. We don't do any padded markups or inflated invoices. You're not ever going to be wondering how we got to the dollar amount that we're charging you. You're going to know exactly how we got there. You're going to know exactly what it was for. You're not going to be wondering, hey, are they marking this up? Are they padding this, right? It's very straightforward. There's no hidden fees, no padded markups, no questions, right? You're going to have complete certainty and confidence. More flexibility to make changes to a project, right? If I'm a fixed price contractor, then doing a change order or making a change to a project becomes a little bit of a bigger deal, right? With a cost plus, it's very easy to incorporate that change. All we really need to do at that point is redefine this new scope of work, right? Write that in a change order form, fill it out, and then we just add it to the project. With a fixed fee, we're having to stop what we're doing, right? Come up with a whole new price with everything else we have left to do, right? And then, it's just much more difficult and cumbersome and disruptive for the project, right? So you're more flexibility, less giant lump sum payment. So part of this depends upon how you run your billing structure. We recommend to do the every 2 weeks model for most projects. But even if you're doing, once a month or whatever, you're not having to make as many large lump sum payments as people are having to make with working with a fixed price contractor, because typically it's like a draw of okay, we're going to do 50%, right, on the first, week, right, or 35% or whatever it is. But typically we're doing it in these large lump sum payments. As a customer, that's beneficial for you, because if you're getting a paycheck every 2 weeks or whatever, you can actually fit within the model. The fees are going to be lower. It's much easier to pay for, right? It's kind of like you're paying out your project as it's happening. So less giant lump sum payments, and then paid for labor, materials, coordination, and leadership. It just is very clear on what everything is going towards, right? And then better outcomes, right? No incentives to cut corners. So this is a big one. And here's how you can frame this to people, right? You could say, hey, if a fixed price contractor is on your project and they begin to, right, get close to their budget, there's two options that they have from there. They can either ask you for more money, which is what typically happens anyways with a fixed price contractor. They could ask you for more money, right? Or they could begin to cut corners. They could begin to try to reduce the amount of money that's being spent by having to come up with more creative ways of completing the job. With a cost plus contractor, you can have complete trust that they're always going to do the job right because there's no kind of overhead mark that they're working towards where they have to meet it in a certain time, right? They're not going to have to ask you for more money, right? There's no incentive to cut corners with cost plus, right? So there are even more reasons why a customer would want to like do a cost plus project, but these are some of the best reasons why. A lot of people up front are concerned about price. Cost plus gives you best price. A lot of people up front are concerned about, can I trust the contractor to actually spend money appropriately? You have full visibility to our books. A lot of people have a hard time up front. Well, can I trust the contractor to actually do the job? We don't have incentive to cut corners, right? You can trust this job. So these are the reasons why a customer want a cost plus contractor. So by the way, I'm going to find a way to send everyone this slideshow afterwards. So if you're taking notes or whatever, or taking a picture of the slides, great, but I'm going to find a way to send this to everybody. Remember, people are looking to be led and will follow whatever expectations you set with them. The reason why I put this note here is a lot of times, if we go in with confidence and explain these things with confidence, right, the customer will buy into us with confidence. Customers don't know how to do construction projects. They feel insecure. They got their guard up, right? But if we can come in with confidence, people are looking to be led and they'll follow the expectations we set with them. But we must set those expectations clearly, right? So let's move on. The one-liner. And I really want everyone to be able to understand the base level concept with cost plus. The one line to say how cost plus works to get people to buy it. This one-liner will help people connect with the value of cost plus quickly, and it makes it so it's perceived as fair. So the one-liner is simply this, right? Here's how we work. You pay what it actually costs to complete the scope. I provide transparent financials and make a fair fee for my work, nothing more. That is cost plus in one line. You pay what it costs to complete the scope. I provide transparent financials, make a fair fee for my work, nothing more. That's a powerful line, right? The thing that's cool about this slide is at the end of the day, customer apprehension about cost plus comes down to simply, can I trust you, right? Are you going to make this more expensive than I think, right? Can I trust you to actually do the job? The one-liner like this, it positions yourself as someone trustworthy whenever you use this. Whenever you're telling someone, I provide transparent financials, you are telling them you don't have to worry about overspending. You don't have to worry about getting into a money pit. You don't have to worry about all these horror stories that you hear with contractors, right? Because I'm going to be providing you everything up front. Whenever you say, I make a fair fee, right? This is a powerful statement to actually say that you make a fair fee. If ultimately we can make it about the fair fee, right? The only objection someone can have is their own personal judgment call about maybe you making less, right? But if we're charging like a 20% contractor fee and a 10% project management fee or 15% or whatever it is, and someone that's like a hard position for someone to be in. If you make it about the fee and the fee is only a minority percentage of the entire project, you know, it's kind of like you're wanting me to make less on this. It identifies a customer you shouldn't work with. And it brings it back to, yeah, you know, it brings it back to the customer actually asking themselves, do I think this is a fair fee? And being in a position where they're like, yeah, this is a fair fee to do this work, right? That's the power of the one-liner. It anchors in trustworthiness and it eliminates the objection. Daniel, what's up, buddy?
Just a quick question on what a fair fee is, for a management fee, and what a fair fee is for marking up material. Is that something that you're going to cover?
So that's more in the mechanics of like cost plus, but you make your fair fee based upon what your fees need to be according to your profit and loss statement. Right. So the way it works is you pay what we pay, then I charge a fee to cover my overhead and net profit. That's the way to think about it. Usually that ends up being anywhere from a total of 30 to 40%, in fees. 40% is on the higher end. So
for
typically
for the supplies.
No. So cost plus, we're not doing a markup on materials.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, we can get into more to the actual cost plus mechanics. The cost plus, again, look at this one-liner. You pay what it actually costs to complete the scope. So you're paying what I'm paying for subs, for materials, a fair standard labor rate. I give you all the financials. I show you where every dollar is going. I give you financial reports, and then I make a fair fee for my work, which is typically, a combination of, 30 to 40% of fees, just to cover your overhead and net profits. That's it, right? Okay. Here's the next part. So we've gone over so far why a customer would want cost plus pricing, right? We've gone over the one-liner, how to anchor in the value of cost plus and the concept of cost plus quickly, right? To get someone to immediately understand. And now I want to talk about, it's not really about what you say, it's how you do. And we're wanting to get now into more of the process, how important the process is to successfully selling cost plus. And when I say process, I'm talking about the overall sales process, how important the overall sales process from the first phone call to the first walkthrough, the proposal review, how important that process is to selling cost plus, right? Sales is more about your process than it is about your persuasiveness. You will sell more successfully if you are more committed to following a process than you are to being very convincing or being very persuasive, right? Or being able to, make a hard close. There's nothing wrong with persuasiveness. It's a valuable skill set in business. However, successfully selling in cost plus has more to do with your process than persuasiveness. Right? What do I mean by that? Essential process steps. The first thing is that cost plus must be in your unique value proposition. Why does it need to be in your unique value proposition? Because it is a characteristic that will make your business uniquely more beneficial than your competitors to your customer. You need to have it on your one sheet. You need to have it on your website. You need to have it on ads that you run, right? That you are a cost plus contractor, not just that you're a cost plus contractor, but you could use that one-liner, right? Cost plus transparent billing. You pay what we pay to complete the scope. I provide transparent financials and make a fair fee for my work, nothing more. The first part of cost plus is have it branded, right? Don't let it be a surprise because you're open with it as a benefit from the front on all your branding, right? For Redmond growth clients, that's essentially the website, the one sheet, and your ads. So that's the first part about it, right? Second part is first appointment outline. And we're going to get into a whole nother slide on the first appointment outline. But how you explain the cost plus pricing structure on your first appointment outline is like the most important part of the process. Gosh, Travis, I meant to actually send this to you beforehand. We'll get into this in just a minute, but I want to give everyone the Power Builders first appointment outline where we actually have like the written explanation of the process, but I can provide that too. I can put it in the chat. So first appointment outline, right? The proposal review. Reviewing your proposal in person or on a video call. And then the project kickoff call. In order to successfully sell cost plus, you got to be following these process steps, right? Operating with this process does a few things. Why do I need to do this, Robert? It does a few things. So first of all, like we went over, at the end of the day, selling cost plus becomes answering the question from the customer, can I trust you? Right? So selling cost plus successfully requires building trust. Will you actually do the things you said you're going to do and provide the things you said you're going to say? Right? So operating with this process does a few things to do that. It ensures that the right things are being said at the right time. Right? If I'm following this process, I'm making sure that I'm saying the right things at the right time to build that customer trust. Second thing is a lot of times cost plus takes an education a little bit. It takes going over it with it a few times for someone to really get it. And it allows, following the process allows the space for the customer to get up to speed and educated on how your cost plus pricing works. And then the last part is because trust is so important, right? Following a process demonstrates your organization, not very common for contractors. It demonstrates your organization and it demonstrates your competency. Just following a process, again, going back to that quotable that I had earlier about people are looking to be led with confidence, right? Having a process demonstrates that confidence, that organization, that competency, right? Think about sales in terms of not what you say, but how you do, how you actually do the sales process. It's more about your process than persuasiveness. In order to successfully sell cost plus, you got to be following these steps. These are steps that we talk a lot about. You'll hear us talk about them ad infinitum. Why do we talk about them so much? Because they work, people. You'll close more. You'll close more. That's why we talk about them. You'll make more money. Okay, let's get into the actual kind of mechanics. How to explain cost plus to your customer. So we've talked about a lot of things so far, right? And I know that I'm covering a lot, and I want to be wrapped up here in the next 5 or 7 minutes here. And then I want to open it up to questions and discussion. How to explain. So we've gone over why, the reasons why cost plus benefits a customer. We've gone over the one-liner. We've gone over the essential process steps. We've gone over the problem. We've gone over what customers are looking for, like how to build trust. Now I want to talk to you about how to actually explain cost plus pricing to a customer, right? This method really works. So the first thing is this. You want to explain this process at the first appointment walkthrough. So again, you're having it on your branding, you're having it on your one sheet, you're having it on your unique value proposition. Anywhere someone can look and turn and see your brand, they're seeing the unique value proposition. They're seeing transparent financial reporting. They're seeing you pay what we pay, right? That's what they're seeing. And I want to give you guys this outline. I'm going to put this in the chat. So this is what we're talking about. So we're talking about how to run the first appointment. So customer calls, you vet them out, you find out it's a good fit, you set an appointment to do a first walkthrough, right? Whatever you guys call that in your process. You're doing that first walkthrough appointment. This is what I'm talking about, right? So towards the end of that, I shared the sheet, right? Because there's a number of steps to take in the process before that. And then towards the end, there's that setting expectation section where you're sitting down with the customer, right? Or saying, hey, there's, you do the walkthrough, you take the measurements, you get the material requirements, you get the vision for the project, right? And then before you leave, you're saying, hey, there's just a few things that I want to go over, right? Before we wrap up today. The first thing is our one sheet. You're giving them the one sheet, right? Hey, we have transparent billing. You see where every penny go. We have cost plus pricing. You never pay more than you have to, right? You have your other unique value propositions. And then you're telling them, you're asking them, how familiar are you with our cost plus pricing? And they're going to say that they're not familiar every time. So you're going to first explain how most contractors charge. This is how you do it. There's typically two ways that contractors charge, right? Which is cost plus and a flat fee. Let's talk about them. Flat fee contractors, and if you're a flat fee contractor right now, this doesn't apply for you. I'm talking about the other flat fee contractors. Flat fee contractors will typically give you a lower price to win the deal. Then after you're stuck with them, they'll ask for more money or they'll cut corners, right? Or you just won't hear from them, right? Because they're waiting to get paid by Peter to pay your project Paul. Flat fee contractors will typically run into money issues of some kind with you. Or they'll give you an inflated price. They'll give you a bigger price that's meant to cover their expenses plus extra cushion for all the unexpected stuff that always comes up on a contract project. But the thing is, even with those that give you the inflated price, they often ask for more money after the contractor begins, right? A contractor can never guarantee you truly a price before starting the project unless they've either massively inflated the price or they just are being unrealistic. Right? So that's, you're positioning yourself against a flat fee contractor. Then you're saying with us as a cost plus contractor, you only pay what we pay, which you'll get better pricing because you'll get our contractor pricing. You only pay what we pay for materials, for skilled trade and subcontractors. If our team's doing any work on your project, we're charging a fair market labor rate, right? $80, $90 an hour, whatever it is. And then we charge you a 20% contractor fee and a 10% project management fee. You're always going to know how we get our price. It's always going to be up front, right? So the first part of explaining cost plus at the first appointment is comparing yourself with a flat fee contractor. Here's the difference between us and a flat fee contractor. Flat fee, they'll either give you a lower price to win the deal, ask for more money later, or they'll try to cut corners on a project, or they'll give you an inflated price because they know that stuff comes up in construction and they can't expect it. And so they'll give themselves extra cushion. You'll end up paying more than you have to, right? With us, you pay what we pay plus our fee, nothing more. So I want to actually give a tangible example, right? And this really, really works. There was another remodeling guy that I actually got this from who's been doing cost plus for a long time. Here's like an actual example you can give people, right? The way you can think of it is a flat fee contractor will charge you $100 when your project really only costs maybe $85. As a cost plus contractor, we may estimate your project at $80, but the project could go as high as 90 or it could go as low as 70. Either way, you're only paying for what the project costs, right? Here's why it benefits you. You always know each and every expense of your project with our transparent billing. You're never gonna have to pay in lump sums. You pay as we progress, right? They go over all the different benefits. So that's a really good example to get people to understand the difference really quick. Hey, your project, a flat fee will charge you $100. Your project could only cost $85. We may estimate your project at 80. It could go up to 90. A lot of times it is less than what we even estimate. But regardless of where it goes, you're only paying for what it actually costs, right? And then you're landing it with your core benefits. And then after that, in the first meeting, you go further and explain what your billing process, like how it actually works, right? So the first appointment is so important. I provided that first appointment outline. Many of you are on it, right? Follow the steps. Towards the end, you go over the one sheet, then you walk them through cost plus versus flat fee contractors. Here's how we charge, right? Here's how other people charge. Here's what we do. So that's how you explain cost plus, right? Major points to lean on, right? So these are just kind of like a recap of emphasizing, hey, how should we like things to really know deeply, stay committed to, right? As a cost plus contractor. Lead with transparency as a benefit. Really drive that home. Most homeowners and even commercial clients, they're scared of being ripped off. They're scared of surprise charges. Cost plus flips that fear on its head. You're essentially saying, I've got nothing to hide. You see every dollar. You can frame this as a more honest way to do business, right? Contrast it against fixed bid to horror stories. That's what we just got done talking about, right? Fixed bids often incentivize contractors to cut corners, to overinflate the price, right? Or to lowball to win the job, then ask for more money later, or making it up in change orders, right? A fixed bid contractor, you can say something like a fixed bid contractor just means the contractor guessed and buried their cushion somewhere you can't see it. And cost plus removes that guessing game. Address the what stops you from padding cost objection head on. Just jump to the gate with it, right? Customers will think this. Just get ahead of it, right? Show them how you actually run your transparent financials, your supplier relationships, your receipts, open invoices, right? If you need to introduce them to suppliers directly, introduce them to suppliers directly, right? So just get ahead of the objection, right? What stops you from padding cost? Well, here's how our transparent billing actually works, right? Here's our suppliers we can introduce you to. Here's our subs. There's nothing we're hiding here. Then build trust with transparent billing. We've already talked about that, right? Anchor your fee into your value confidently. Be ready to explain and defend your fees. It's your margin. Don't do it apologetically. Do it confidently. Hey, our project management and scheduling fee covers our trucks, our software to plan your whole project, our admin salaries to get all the permits pulled, right? Our team's training, our reliability. Our 20% contractor fee covers our profit. That's what we're in business for. Anchor your value into the fee structure confidently, right? Know how to explain it. And then lastly, use social proof. Use those Google reviews. Use those testimonials. Create a referral list that you prepare in the first appointment, ready to give to people. Call our referrals, right? Hey, if this cost plus structure works so well for all these other people, we know it's going to work well for you, right? If this is our reputation, right? If these people are saying about it, right? They can trust every invoice. They trusted every number. You can rest assured that you can trust that too. All right, landing the plane here. It's kind of like the wrap up. Proposal review that must be done in person or on video. Why is that so important? Why? Because if you don't do it, you miss the opportunity to define and explain the stuff that could literally make or break the deal. That's what happens. If you're not reviewing it in video or in person, you're missing the opportunity to explain and define the stuff that could literally make or break the deal. How does that relate to cost plus? Because you're literally missing the opportunity to explain, these are the literal charges for all of this, right? This is the literal price for all this, like material, subs, all that, right? Here's our fee structure. This is how it works. You're missing the opportunity to explain how the cost plus pricing structure works in action. So you got to do it, right? You got to do that proposal review or video call. This is the most accurate. Remind them what an estimate actually is on that proposal review call. Remind them what an estimate actually is. So what is an estimate? When you're giving that first kind of proposal, you're literally telling them this. As a cost plus contractor, I still very much care about finding out how much this thing is going to cost so that you know, so that we can make sure that this is, within the scope. So this estimate, this is the most accurate and reliable price I can give you at this point of the job right now. Based on everything I know about the job, this is the most accurate price, but it is an estimate. Meaning that things change when project starts, right? Things change when we open walls. Things change when we open floorboards. And so things change when when construction projects start. So this is an estimate, but this is the most accurate and reliable price I can give you at this point of the job. Cost plus doesn't mean we're not paying attention to costs and we just threw random numbers together. It means that I want to be able to tell you the exact cost, but that honestly changes on every construction job. And unless I'm padding you like my fee, I want you to be prepared for what's realistic. Right? So be sure to actually explain what the estimate is to your customer. Don't leave room for misunderstandings. General rule of thumb. General rule of thumb. I like to tell customers, if you could not exceed, if your budget could not exceed 20 to 25% of what's here, then we probably should reassess the scope. Not saying it's going to be 20 to 25% more, but if we're already feeling uneasy about things, right, then we want to reassess the scope. You're doing this on the proposal review call. These are all the things you're doing on the proposal review call. So it's like, well, how do I know that the costs just aren't going to get, overinflated? Well, if you can't go, 25% higher, then we should probably reassess, because that means you're working with a really, really tight budget. That means there's not really room for this. I don't really have control over what's going to happen all the time. And I don't want you to start a project where you're going to be stuck not being able to finish it, right? So as a general rule of thumb, tell customers, as you're reviewing the proposal, this is the most accurate price I can give you at this point, but if you can't see yourself exceeding a 20 to 25% budget, then we should probably reassess. That doesn't mean leave. That doesn't mean not do the job. That means reassess. That means let's come up with a scope that works, right? Lance, what's up, buddy? Good to see you, man.
Hey, thanks. One of the biggest objections, like all this stuff is great. This is like very good tools. One of the biggest objections I've had or I've seen is we have the spreadsheet and stuff that y'all made and sent to us and stuff, but having our team follow up with like every receipt and tracking the job and all that created this, like we've tried it, like, and we've even practiced it with Bryce. It like created this like disaster for us on the accounting side of just like, it was so much work to do one job, cost plus. We couldn't imagine, like right now we have like 6 projects going on, things changing daily, keeping track of that. Like what would you suggest, or like what's the best way to not create all this work for everybody to do it? It just seemed like we must be doing something wrong. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm thinking we may need to do another one of these that's more into the mechanics of like actual cost plus. The way that we do that is we have like outlined a very specific system to update across all jobs what each expense is daily, because there's only so many places where those expenses will be reported, right? It's either going to be in your Home Depot account. There's either going to be a PO in Builder Trend. It's either going to be in, bank statement or QuickBooks or something like that. And so we use someone who's offshore, and her entire job is to do what you're describing. And that's it. We pay her about $300 a week, and we pay her $300 a week to create all of the transparent financial reports that we're talking about. Because you're right, it can get very chaotic. So, yeah, I could talk. I want to I'm tempted to want to actually show you how that works, but there's just not enough time for it today. And so, yeah, we're pretty much wrapped up. The last point I had here is just make sure to include the entire fee structure in your contract. And so, yeah, how we sell cost plus. Let's open it up for questions. Yeah, is it Keelan Rooney?
Keelan. Yeah.
Keelan.
Yeah. Hey, how's it going?
Good,
So
good.
two questions. Labor rates, if we're charging $85 an hour, paying our guys 40, 45, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. How do you explain that as cost plus? Because that's technically not really cost plus, right? It
is.
Okay.
So it still is, because what you're paying someone per hour isn't what that person actually cost your business.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
So there's this concept of what someone's true labor rate is. But more importantly, you're not telling a customer that you're charging a, what I personally pay these employees. You're telling the
Right.
customer, I'm charging a fair market rate for my own internal labor.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
essentially you're charged, like you can think of yourself, like when you're paying a sub on a cost plus job, right?
Mhm.
Like when that sub charges you for labor, right? They're charging you at what, like 80, 90, 120, whatever it is. So
Yep.
you can think of yourself almost acting in that same way. That's how
Okay.
it works. So you're telling customers, we charge a true market rate. And what I would say at the end of the day is, how do you explain that? Is like, just don't be afraid to be open with people.
Yep.
Right? Like, yeah, I don't pay my guys. If they were to ask, well, do you pay you guys $85 an hour or whatever it is? No, I don't pay my guys that much per hour. Right. But I also know that as a business owner, there's a true labor cost associated with my team, that there's a lot more ancillary costs that are required to have employees.
Right.
Right. So that's what the true labor market rate covers.
Okay. And then one more question, like cost plus, it almost seems like it's kind of time and material. So how do you like explain that, like the difference between time and material and cost plus?
So the way I like to frame it is, cost plus is more of a margin approach, and time and material is more of a markup approach.
Okay.
So typically, so there are some very similar mechanics to time and material and how cost plus works, right? But typically with time and material, you are adding a markup to time and material. With cost plus, it's a margin basis.
Gotcha. Yeah,
right?
makes sense.
You're
Yeah.
only wanting to make a margin of the job. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Yeah, cool.
good questions,
it.
really good questions.
Thanks.
All right, Mr. Rapid Repair.
Yes, Robert, question. How long did it take you to get comfortable to use this method and change from what you were currently, what you were doing beforehand?
Like 6 months.
About 6 months? Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
but
is there-
it was like more of born from pain. It was like more like born from like, oh gosh, what we're doing isn't working, and it's like, we got to change this, right? And it took us about 6 months to like figure it out.
Okay. And then the second one is briefly, can you give us an example of how one of these worked out for you, like on some type of a remodel project that you worked on, what your overhead was, how you made your profit, and what it looked like?
Yeah, so I mean, that's the beautiful thing about cost plus, is that if you are charging correctly, and that kind of step that Lance is talking about is super important, because you got to make sure that you're actually accounting for all your costs, right? But if you're doing that correctly and accurately, your margins will follow that fee that you're charging. Now, the stuff that can mess it up is like, hey, if there's like pre-existing debt, or, like other things that are involved, that could be involved in the business. But even in those situations, you may just need to make an adjustment to your margin, or, just sell more, right? And so that's the beautiful thing about cost plus, is whatever the fee structure is, that's how it's designed, is that your P&L, right, your profits at the end of the day should follow what that fee structure is set up as for each cost plus project.
Okay.
Cool. Johnny, what's up, buddy?
Good morning. So years ago, I was in a continuing education class, and the instructor made a comment that, and again, I don't know how true this is. I don't know where you got this data. This was through the National Association of Home Builders, but he said to the class that over 80% of all litigation around construction contracts stems from a cost plus contract. And I was just wondering, what is your experience or knowledge of litigation rates
Yeah.
as it relates to types of contracts?
So I don't have a lot of knowledge on that kind of statistics, but I can tell you my own experience. My own experience is that we were involved in litigation whenever we had a poorly defined cost plus process. And I'm going to guess that most contractors that are in that 80% are not doing these steps that we just went over, right? A lot of these steps are how to protect yourselves ahead of time from even getting into a customer dispute down the road. That's why so much of this was built on setting the right customer expectations, right? And following specific process steps and doing these different things, right? So that it's actually, you could actually set expectations to avoid customer disputes down the road. So again, I don't know a lot about that data, and I don't really know the point that your instructor was trying to make. I don't know if he was saying this is why you should never do cost plus or not.
Well, it was a while ago. I do kind of feel like maybe that was his point, was to be careful with cost plus. But I think it could probably be said whether you're using a fixed cost or a hybrid cost or a cost plus. Us contractors are bad about contracts across the board and defining scopes and setting customer expectations. We probably don't do a good enough job across the board. So, just curious. I've been a custom home builder for 15 years, and I don't like fixed cost, or I don't like fixed costs, and so we went to kind of a hybrid contract. But even that wasn't working as well as I'd wanted it to. So in the last couple of years, I've gone to more of a cost plus method, but I resisted it for a long time just because of what that instructor had said. And so I've always kind of, I'm just kind of wondered if there was.
I had never heard that. I'm really curious about that. I would also say that doesn't necessarily surprise me.
Yeah.
Just because if you poorly do cost plus, like if you're not really reporting on financials, and like the nature of it is like you're going to get into a dispute, right? Because at some point you're going to say, well, you owe me more money. And the customer's going to be like, I don't owe you more money, right? And there's going to be some sort of dispute. That's why it's so important to really make sure that those like steps and that contract are really followed up front, and those expectations are really clearly established from the get-go, right?
Great, thank you.
Here's what I'll say is that we haven't had, since we followed this process, we've done, I would say anywhere between 10 to 15 larger construction jobs, right? Like each worth like $50,000 or more. And we have yet to run into any sort of customer dissatisfaction litigation issue at all. Before we were running this process, we ran into 2 of those. And so I do think the process really can make or break it.
Yeah, and in my experience, most of our projects are going to run between 500 and $1.5 million. And kind of to Lance's point, the cost plus has definitely created a lot more work for sure. And I think that's probably why we resisted it for a long time as well, just because it was almost it was a daunting challenge to try to keep up with, and not only keep up with, but then be transparent in $1.5 million worth of expenses.
Dude, I have been on, like, I remember we've done a $600,000 project, and this is one of the projects we had issues on, and I had to go back and do all that financial work, and it took me hours and hours, right? So I get the task of it. However, I think we have figured out how to actually solve that piece of it really well. Like, we've really figured out a system that really works for us. And I think that's, to your point and to Lance's question, I think that is something we need to go over.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of the mechanics side of it, for sure, just to see how you're approaching it.
Yeah, I think it'd be helpful to show you guys how I train someone in that role, right? Because now that I know how that role needs to work, to me, it seems like very straightforward. Like the task is manageable, it's doable, and it's defined, right? And it will work, and you won't miss if it's followed. So yeah, I think we need to cover that. Daniel, what's up, buddy?
So just kind of a quick question. So I am a general contractor, but I specialize in landscaping and outdoor living. Do you feel like this cost plus method would make sense in my space. I mean, we tend to take on very much larger, more complex projects. And do you feel like overall the profitability is better following this model than not?
So the profitability is better by following this model. Every time it's better. That's just what I've seen. I've seen a lot, right? So that's why I'd say to that. Now, regarding outdoor living, my only thought would be if there are a lot less unpredictable variables in those kind of projects, meaning like if you can look at a scope and know that like there's not going to be a lot of changes to that scope, right? Or there's not going to be a lot of variables that you're going to uncover when you start the project that would change the scope, right? In some of those types of projects, it may make sense to do a fixed price, right? The main reason why we're advocating for cost plus is because of the nature of most construction projects. After we start, there's stuff that we uncover that was just impossible to see beforehand. There's scope changes that the customer wants to make. Those scope changes often affect a lot of other parts of the job. And so there's more variables that change the job, which is why you have to have a building model that is more fluid and can flow with those variables. That's why the cost plus really works. But if you're in an environment that's much more controlled, like for service businesses, right? Like I'm not telling people to run a service call on cost plus, right? Well, why not? Well, it's because the variables are a lot more controlled, right? If I'm going in to replace a 40-gallon water heater, there's not too many variables that could be in that situation that's going to prevent me from being able to, install that water heater, replace that water heater in a 4-hour time span, right?
Would it make sense to where there's, like structures and some of the bigger items that definitely do have more variables to run a hybrid model and say, hey, we're dialed on our landscaping.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
I think that makes sense. Again, like one of the biggest things I want to hit home with this is transparency. Like if you think about the reasons why, like Keelan brought up earlier, like the labor rate problem. Even if I didn't give the feedback to Keelan that I did, like I would just want people to know that if you just default to transparency with how things work, that's always going to be the better method, right? A lot of times as contractors, I don't know about you guys. I know that I, at times in the past, have been like afraid, like what happens if they like find out that this is how we're charging? Like what happens? I don't like feels like there's this tension a little bit, right? And that's just not necessary. And it's not necessary. The way you eliminate that is just through defaulting to transparency. So what that means in your context is if you had a situation, right, where you're wanting to run a hybrid kind of structure, then you just explain to the customer, hey, I'm wanting to run a hybrid kind of cost plus structure. Here's how it works. Here's why I'm wanting to do it. Right. Here's why it makes sense for you guys. If you do those things, you're going to be golden. Yeah. At like something I want to kind of hit home too. At the end of the day, if you have something that works for you, then keep doing it. If you're able to successfully sell fixed price jobs at, and make, a 60% gross profit on those jobs, right? Then like, I'm not going to tell you to change your billing structure because there's something about the way you're doing things that works and makes sense. It doesn't need to be changed. But if you're having trouble winning over people to cost plus, if you're having trouble knowing what your profits are at the end of the day, if your profitability is low, if you're having trouble managing the expenses, right? If you're not knowing why in your estimates that, things get more expensive after you estimate, if those kinds of problems exist, then cost plus is a great solution. Really good questions, guys. Really good questions. I am feeling like we did a cost plus workshop a few months ago, but I think we may need to even drill in deeper to some of the specific mechanics of that process. And maybe do something like that again, because I've been feeling just myself that there is a little bit of a gap or a little bit of a hole in the kinds of things that Lance and Johnny are talking about, which is like to provide transparent billing. If you don't have like the right system or process there, that's like a nightmare task, And so I think we figured that out pretty well. We figured it out in a way that works, and I think it would be helpful to show you guys. Yeah, what's up, Keelan?
Just to kind of piggyback on that, I think that, the cost plus, as far as like, if there was ever an issue with a client, it's kind of an easy exit strategy. Like, say they don't like it and things go awry. It's like you're not, for lack of a better term, sorry, ladies, balls deep in a huge contract where there's going to be litigation, right? Am I right about that?
Dude, how dare you say balls deep on this group call? There are so many women on this call that are now offended.
I'm sorry.
No, I think there's like 15 dudes on this call at this point, so I think you're all good. Yeah, so you're right. I mean, that's a thought that I have had. Now we've not necessarily been in a situation where we've had to like walk away from our job, but that's one of the values of cost plus, why we emphasize it to our contractors, is that you're never going to be in this situation where you've got all this money tied up to this job and they're not paying, and like
Right.
the system was really born from that pain. But like
Yeah.
I know I said that earlier, but it was like literally born from the pain of customer owing us money, not wanting to pay. And then me being in a situation like, I don't know how we're going to pay our credit card bill.
Yeah. And then, so also maybe somebody needs to develop an app that kind of keeps tracks of your job. Like you have that, you said the offshore person who keeps track of that. I mean, maybe there's a way to all your invoices and material costs and everything. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it, but you still, at the end of the day, you still need someone to attach expenses to a particular job.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like even the best AI out there isn't going to be able to accurately, if you're running multiple jobs, isn't going to be accurately able to know what, which project this one box of nails was
Right.
specifically attached to that was bought from Home Depot in the middle of your city.
Right.
So I think there is a lot of software that can make it easier.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, like it's kind of like with bookkeeping, like you still just need someone. There's software out there that can like see kind of spending trends with vendors and automatically, categorize stuff. But at the end of the day, you still need someone to look at that and categorize the stuff and clean it up, right? That just can make those decisions.
So does your person want more work? I mean, could you share the contact?
It's funny because I that's the thing I would actually like to figure out. I'd like to figure out a way to like make these people available to our clients, right? Like to where they're all trained up, they know what they're doing, right? Because like it's like a task like this is the perfect kind of task for offshore. Yeah, Victoria needs one. Man, I would really love to figure that out. But
Yeah.
we can at least show you right at first how it's done. So all right, Salvador, did you have something? We'll go last question with Salvador.
Actually, all I was going to say was over the course of like a couple months or so, I developed a pretty decent Excel spreadsheet for tracking things, specifically as a contractor, expense-wise. Because, like Robert said, I mean, you need that human aspect to it. Somebody needs to physically input and to get it in the right category. I mean, you can automate things to a certain extent with Excel, but you do need that person to input those things. Now you can create an Excel spreadsheet and make it shareable to all of your team members and just make it kind of a rule for them. Like, hey, when you're at the register or whatever, don't leave the register or don't pull out of the parking lot until you input these expenses in the spreadsheet. Categorize them where they go, whether it's COGS, what type of job or what job it's for, things like that, what client it's for. That way, when you need any of that data, you can just plug in the request in Excel, whatever it's called. I can't think of the word right now. And you can extract all that data that you need specifically for the client when they request it, if they request it.
I think that's great.
It's something that I'd definitely be willing to send to anybody interested. It's not I mean, I'd be happy to walk through how I use it, but it's not perfect. There's always tweaks you can make to it, but it's something that has been a great asset to me just over time.
That's good. It sounds like a great tool. Yeah, Jeff, we'd love to hear more about the billing process. I think that's where we go next. But I hope that the topic today, just how to sell it, how to explain it, how to connect the dots with customers, how to run your sales process. Hope that was helpful, and appreciate you guys staying for extra time. Really glad that we got these questions in, and appreciate you guys. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. We got a shorter room, but we still got enough in here to do a growth breakdown. Unmute your mics for the countdown. If it's first time here, we end these calls by going 3, 2, 1, then all saying growth together with our mics unmuted. So 3, 2, 1. Growth!